Hello everyone, welcome to the Best Things channel. Get ready, now I'll show you top 10 roller coaster accidents. After an hour standing in line, you finally get a seat on the amusement park's most awe-inspiring ride, a towering roller coaster called Millennium Force. The butterflies flutter in your stomach as the ride operator secures the restraint over your shoulders and you realize there's no turning back. Ahead, the rail seems to climb into the clouds. Your heartbeat doubles as the car creeps ahead, up until you top out at 310 feet on the precipice of a near vertical drop. This is a bad time to wonder, is this thing safe? You'll be glad to know before you hurtle down the track at 93 miles per hour that the answer is yes. The International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions estimates the chance of being killed on an amusement park ride is just 1 in 750 million. Compare that to the likelihood you'll be struck by lightning in a given year, which at about 1 in 960,000 makes roller coasters look exceedingly safe. Still, deaths do happen. Between 1994 and 2004, 22 people were killed on roller coasters in the United States because of rider or operator error or mechanical failure. And while these incidents are certainly the exception during the roller coaster's 200-plus year history, there are still a frighteningly high number of incidents to choose from for our list of 10 deadliest roller coaster accidents. But before we start, please like, subscribe to the channel and click on the bell. Here we go. Number 10. Wildcat, Bell's Amusement Park. If you've ever ridden a roller coaster, you know the nervous excitement that builds as the cars slowly climb to the top of the ride. It's the calm before a thrilling blur of speed, tight turns and 360-degree loops. Now imagine how terrifying it would be if the lift chain pulling your car to the summit malfunctioned and sent it careening backward. That's exactly what happened on April 20, 1997, at Bell's Amusement Park in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That day, visitors packed the park for a special 25-cent per ride promotion. A popular attraction was the Wildcat roller coaster, which had been testing Tulsans' nerves since 1974. As one of the ride's cars reached the top of the highest hill, it stalled out, and a safety device meant to keep it from sliding backward failed. The car slipped 45 feet back down the track and slammed into another car, ejecting a 14-year-old boy who was the lone fatality. 6 other people were injured. State investigators ultimately determined that Bell's had replaced a plastic part of the anti-rollback device with a material that was not approved by the manufacturer. While the victims' families negotiated a financial settlement with the park's owners, criminal charges were eventually dropped. Bell's Amusement Park closed in 2006. Number 9. Willard's Whizzer, Marriott's Great America Amusement Park. Roller coasters don't have to reach extreme height or speed to cause a fatal accident. Take Willard's Whizzer, which peaked at just 70 feet and clocked in at a paltry 42 miles per hour. It was so tame that when it was first constructed in 1976, its cars didn't even have restraints. The incident occurred on March 29, 1980, when a teenage boy was stepping onto the ride. Without warning, a second train came up behind the one he was boarding and rammed it. The impact threw the teen onto the tracks, where the runaway train crushed his chest and abdomen. 8 others were injured in the accident, one of 5 fatal incidents in the park's history. Because the second train breached several automatic safety systems, investigators pinned the blame on an electric signal that disrupted the roller coaster's computer. In an effort to rejuvenate the ride's image, the park put seatbelts in the cars and renamed the ride simply Whizzer. Nevertheless, the park eventually disassembled Whizzer in 1988. Number 8. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, Disneyland. In 1979, Disneyland built its Big Thunder Mountain Railroad ride around a runaway mine train theme complete with caves, mine shafts and a desert landscape. That premise became all too real in 2003 when part of a train actually derailed, killing 1 rider and injuring 10 others. The train, which consists of a small locomotive and 5 cars that can carry 32 people, had just shot up a hill and into a tunnel when the accident happened. A wheel assembly fell off the locomotive, jamming one of the axles and causing the back end of the locomotive to kick up and hit the top of the tunnel. The front car then struck the locomotive's undercarriage, killing 1 man who had to be extricated from the wreckage by emergency workers. When the dust settled, the locomotive sat derailed at the top of the hill, while the remaining cars stayed on the tracks and came to rest 20 to 30 feet away at the bottom of the incline. Investigators from the California Division of Occupational Safety and Health later released a report blaming park maintenance workers, ride operators and a mechanic for the accident. Disney settled with the deceased rider's family for an undisclosed amount of money. Number 7. Fujin Raijin 2 Expoland. May 5, 2007 was Children's Day in Japan, but no one was celebrating after a roller coaster accident left 1 dead and 19 injured in Osaka. The incident occurred on the Fujin Raijin 2 ride at Expoland, an amusement park first built for the International Exposition in 1970. The coaster's design required riders to stand throughout the 0.65-mile course, where the 6-car trains reached speeds as high as 47 miles per hour. Everything seemed normal when 20 passengers got on the Fujin Raijin 2 in the early afternoon. The ride was more than halfway over when, suddenly the second car derailed and tilted dramatically to the left toward the guardrail. That proved fatal for one young woman, who struck her head on the railing as the coaster roared down the tracks. And so it continued, making a horrible scraping sound before finally coming to a rest some 328 yards later. According to Expoland's operator, a broken wheel axle was responsible for the tragic accident. The problem might have been caught during the ride's annual maintenance, but these repairs didn't happen in 2007. The park claimed it didn't have enough workspace to disassemble and inspect the cars. Expoland closed in 2009, 1.6 billion yen in the hole, thanks in large part to declining ticket sales in the wake of the coaster disaster. Number 6, Derby Racer, Revere Beach. The concept behind the Derby Racer at Revere Beach. The concept behind the Derby Racer at Revere Beach, Massachusetts, was a fun one. 2 trains raced down parallel tracks to a finish line at the bottom of the ride. You can imagine the scene as teenagers screamed and taunted one another as one car pulled ahead, then the other through a series of dips and curves on the figure 8-shaped course. But excitement and friendly competition often turned to tragedy thanks to the coaster's abysmal safety record. Things got off to a bad start in June 1911 when the treasurer of the roller coaster company was fatally injured, ironically, when he stood up to lecture other passengers about safety. The accident, which was actually the second fatality of the year, forced local officials to revoke the ride's license until workers could install brakes and safety restraints in the passenger cars. Apparently, however, the restraints didn't do much good. In 1917, a man lost his hat as the train headed up a steep incline, and he fell out of his car while attempting to recover it. He tumbled onto the other track, where he was hit by a train and dragged 35 feet. He died, according to the newspaper, after breaking nearly every bone and body. In 1936, the Derby Racer was demolished, but not, evidently, because of its bad reputation. The roller coaster that replaced it was simply called the New Derby Racer. Number 5, Wild Wonder, Wonderland Pier. Ocean City, New Jersey is a place where families go to relax and enjoy the beaches and boardwalk. Among the many recreational opportunities available to vacationers is Jillian's Wonderland Pier, an amusement park located on the north end of the boardwalk. With its festive carnival vibe and crowds of wide-eyed children, it's easy to forget it was the site of a fatal roller coaster accident in 1999. The coaster, called the Wild Wonder, had been open only a couple of months when passengers loaded the doomed train on August 28. The cars slowly rolled around a 90-degree curve before ascending the ride's first grade. Just before it topped out at the 41-foot crest, however, the drive chain disengaged prematurely and the anti-rollback device malfunctioned, sending the train tearing backward into the turn. While the cars stayed on the tracks, the force of the curve ejected a mother and her daughter whose safety bar failed to hold them in their seats. The pair struck the roller coaster's walls and support columns, fell 10 feet to the ground below, and were pronounced dead at the hospital a short time later. The wrong-way car continued to roll down the track, striking another train in the loading area and injuring 2 of its passengers. In the end, investigators determined that a faulty brake replacement caused the accident. The New Jersey Community Affairs Department fined the park's owner and the coaster's manufacturer $55,000 for safety rule violations. Number 4, Rough Riders, Coney Island. Today, a roller coaster named Rough Riders wouldn't sound particularly appealing. But in 1915, the Spanish-American War, which featured Theodore Roosevelt's legendary Rough Riders Cavalry Regiment, was still a recent memory, so it probably sounded awesome. Not so on July 27 of that year, however, when an accident killed 3 riders and injured 3 others. The Rough Riders, originally known as Drop the Dip, was located in Coney Island, New York. The coaster operated much like a modern subway. Each train had a driver and an electric motor powered by a third rail that propelled its riders up hills and around corners. On that fateful summer day in 1915, 6 people boarded the ride. Excitement built as they slowly passed through an exhibit that recalled scenes from the war. Then the train accelerated. A crowd looked on as it shot down an incline and headed into a sharp turn. Suddenly the wheels left the track, flipping the car on its side and hurling the driver and 4 passengers into a flimsy iron railing 30 feet above the pavement. 3 fell to their deaths while 2, a woman and her 4-year-old son, clung to the wrecked car's handrail until police were able to rescue them. Another person was injured when the driver's body struck her as she watched from the ground. Witnesses claimed that the accident was caused by excessive speed as the train entered the turn. However, jurors ultimately exonerated the ride's manager on charges of homicide after determining that the accident was unavoidable. Number 3. Mindbender, Fantasyland. The 1986 Mindbender accident is the only disaster on the list that happened indoors, but that doesn't make it any less tragic. The ride, said to be the largest indoor triple-loop coaster, featured steel construction and a 4-car train. It was the main attraction of the West Edmonton Mall's amusement park Fantasyland. It was June 14, 1986, just one day after an Alberta province safety inspector declared the ride safe. The train slid around a turn at 60 miles per hour, gaining momentum for the first of the 3 loops. Before it got there, though, the rear car began to fishtail. It proceeded through the first 2 loops, but derailed as it approached the 3rd loop, stalling at the top and sliding backward into a concrete column. 3 riders perished, and at least 15 were injured, 1 seriously. Investigators determined that missing bolts in a wheel assembly caused the accident. The ride was subsequently closed for several months, while the operators made safety improvements to the cars, including the installation of anti-rollback mechanisms, seat belts and headrests. Additionally, the number of seats per car was reduced from 16 to 12, and the number of cars in the train was reduced from 4 to 3. Since then, the amusement park's name has changed from Fantasyland to Galaxyland, and the Mindbender has, thankfully, been accident-free. Number 2. Big Dipper, Krug Park. Local beer magnate Frederick Krug was the owner and namesake of Omaha, Nebraska's Krug Park, but no alcohol was involved when the Big Dipper's train derailed on July 24, 1930. Instead, it was mechanical failure that led to the deadliest roller coaster accident in United States history. The train's 4 cars were heavily loaded as they departed the boarding area and headed up the first incline. According to investigators, that's when a piece of the brake system worked its way loose and jammed the wheels on one of the cars. It jumped the tracks, breaking through a guardrail before plummeting 35 feet to the ground below. Tragically, the coaster's lift chain continued to run, pushing the other 3 cars over the edge with the first one. Many riders found themselves pinned underneath the runaway train, which ultimately killed 4 people and injured 19. Business declined after the disaster, forcing Krug Park to close by 1940. In 1945, concerned citizens launched a fundraising campaign to purchase the land and reopen it as a city park, which they did in 1955. The site, now known as Gallagher Park, boasts a swimming pool and baseball field, no roller coasters in sight. Number 1. Big Dipper, Battersea Park. In 1972, Battersea Park in London, England, was the scene of what's widely considered the worst roller coaster disaster in history. The ride in question was the Big Dipper, a 3-car wooden roller coaster built in 1951 as the main attraction for the park's new fun fair. It was hugely popular, comparable to today's iconic London Eye. Ominously, the coaster experienced problems from the beginning. In May 1951, an empty car derailed and knocked over a protective railing, stranding passengers in the other cars. Disaster struck again in 1968 when another crash gave a woman a broken arm. But by far the worst accident at the Big Dipper happened in the late afternoon of May 30, 1972. That's when 31 people climbed aboard the coaster for a few minutes of heart-pounding fun. Instead, excitement turned to terror as the lift chain prematurely released at the top of the first incline, sending the cars plummeting backward down the hill and into a turn. The train derailed, killing 5 children and injuring 13 others. In the aftermath of the accident, the park manager and the coaster's engineer were charged with manslaughter, though they were cleared at trial. But the accident was the beginning of the end for the coaster and the park. The Big Dipper was closed and demolished soon after the tragedy, and the fun fair shut its doors in 1974. Well, how do you like the selection? If you want to watch more of these videos, be sure to check out my channel, because there are still a lot of such videos. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And also check out this playlist of my top 10 videos, and see you in the next videos. See you soon.